Timothée Chalamet is one of Hollywood's hottest young actors, and one of the most disappointing parts of 2020, at least for me, is the delay of his new movie Dune, an adaptation of Frank Herbert's 1965 novel of the same name. It's a book I admittedly hadn't picked up until I heard about this new adaptation directed by Denis Villeneuve, and honestly, he could direct a piece of gum on the sidewalk for 2 hours, and I'd say it deserves a Best Picture nomination, but that's a conversation for another day.
Timothée Chalamet plays Paul Atreides, the son of the Duke of a planet called Dune, a desert planet with some very interesting biology. The first animals many people will point to are the sandworms, beasts so iconic that even if you've never heard of them directly from Dune, you've definitely still seen references or echoes to them in various media, even today.
But Arakean sandworms aren't the reason I'm talking about Timothée Chalamet and Dune. No. The reason I'm talking about Timothée Chalamet is because, Christ, come on, his cheekbones and his eyes and his hair. When designing Dune's ecology, Frank Herbert took a lot of inspiration from real-life desert ecosystems. And that's why today we're in Pasadena, a city in California just outside the Angeles National Forest and just outside Los Angeles. Wait, but Jarrett, I thought Canyon Wrens were desert birds. Why are we in the forest? All of California is on fire all of the time, so the whole state is a desert all of the time. The bird we're searching for today is the Canyon Wren, a bird who might not have directly influenced Frank Herbert when he was writing Dune, but a bird whose biology is inarguably present in Dune's desert biology. Today we're talking about Canyon Wrens and why they're my favorite bird.
If you know the general wren shape, then they're most easily identifiable by their clearly defined white throat, something absent on other wrens in the area. I'm sorry if I sound a little parched. For our conversation today about canyon wrens, I've dehydrated myself for 72 hours. I'm totally just kidding. I totally have had water for the last 72 hours because I'm a human person who needs water to live and to drink. That was a fly. Which are not birds. That might seem trivial. It's common knowledge that humans can't go more than, 4 days without water? And I'm sure anyone who has gone more than a few days, let alone a few hours without water, can attest to how unpleasant it can be. And that's because we need water for everything that we do. It's required for the breakdown of nutrients and things our body can use, to attach to and transport molecules. Every cell on Earth requires water to retain some semblance of structure. Everything we do, we need water for. And that's why we drink so much of it, why we're thirsty all the time. So the idea of there being an animal that can live without water is crazy, right? Not so much. Okay, I want to make it clear that canyon wrens can't literally live without water. Just like us, they need H2O for even the most basic of cellular functions. So why then are they never observed actually drinking it? When foraging by streams or put in an enclosure with water, they're very, very rarely observed actually ingesting it. So what's going on here? For the answer, let's turn back to Dune. At a dinner party in the Duke's castle, a wealthy banker says, "All of our birds, of course, are carrion eaters, and many exist without water, having become blood drinkers." The birds of Dune still need water to live, but they get all their water from blood of carrion, or dead animals. And the canyon wren isn't some vampiric bird that'll drink your blood if you die in the desert, but just like the birds of Dune, it gets all the water from things it eats, mostly insects and other arthropods. And to be fair, this behavior isn't completely unique to canyon wrens. Some other desert birds and vertebrates do it too. But it is rare. So then, if a lot of animals practice this free water abstention thing, why is it cool to talk about it in the context of canyon wrens? Well, believe it or not, it has to do with metabolism, bananas, and the absolute hotness of Timothée Chalamet. That was good. Something everybody learns in high school biology is that volume grows faster than does surface area. So if Timothée Chalamet were, say, the size of an elephant, he would have a much larger volume to surface area ratio than if he were the size of, say, a mouse. In other words, elephant Timothée has relatively much less surface area than mouse Timothée, and therefore less surface area to lose heat from. Less surface area to lose heat from means elephant Timothée loses less heat and needs to spend less energy keeping his body at a consistent temperature. And because elephant Timothée doesn't need to spend as many calories on thermoregulation, he doesn't need to consume as many calories overall. And this is where you get a very generalized relationship between an animal's size and the relative amount of calories it needs to ingest. The larger an animal is, the less calories it needs to consume relative to its size. Or in other words, smaller animals, because they need to consume relatively more calories, have a higher metabolic rate. In fact, elephant Timothée Chalamet consumes about 70,000 calories in a day, which is about 800 bananas. But if he ate the same amount of calories that mouse Timothée Chalamet did, kilogram for kilogram, he would eat 25 million calories in a day, or 280,000 bananas. That's like so many bananas. And this trend applies to all homeothermic animals, or animals that maintain a consistent internal temperature, always with the expense of energy. And you can use this trend to predict the energy requirements of all homeothermic animals of all different sizes, like orca whale Timothée Chalamet, human Timothée Chalamet, raccoon Timothée Chalamet, even walrus Timothée Chalamet.
Nice. Hey, put those hands where I can see them. What? What the hell's this? What the hell's this? Oh, that's Timothée Chalamet as a walrus. Yeah, I know it's Timothée Chalamet as a walrus. I mean, you asked. I let you get away with the elephant and the orca whale, but this one's too far. Hey, what the hell's this? It's Timothée Chalamet. Don't worry, I'm handling it. No, I mean, how could you do this? How could I... How could you Photoshop and ruin this perfectly sexy walrus? What the hell's this? It's Timothée Chalamet as a walrus. Where did you even come from? Oh, sorry. No. What the hell's this? Oh, that's a canyon wren. Oh, okay. So, how is any of this applicable? Well, I'll tell you. So, what does that have anything to do with canyon wrens and the water they don't drink? Well, if smaller animals have higher metabolic rates, and water is required for nearly all metabolic function, then you would expect smaller animals to drink relatively more water, right? Well, you'd be correct. This turns out to be generally true. And that's why canyon wrens and other desert birds not drinking water is particularly remarkable. Canyon wrens, being only 5.5 inches, or 6 depending on where you decide the base is, aren't large birds. And so you'd expect them to be drinking water like nobody's business, right? But they don't. So let's talk about why. The birds of dune drink blood in the desert, but what non-fictional adaptations do canyon wrens and other non-drinking birds on Earth have? Disclaimer here, canyon wrens are one of the least studied birds in North America, so I'm synthesizing a lot of information here about different desert birds, and some of these adaptations might not all apply to canyon wrens. We're painting broad strokes. You see this? The bottom part of this banana? The shame on this banana? Why does this exist? Through thousands of years of selective breeding, we couldn't get rid of the awful, putrid little bottom part. Why? I guess it's because evolution works in mysterious ways. And I guess that's as good a segue as any into our next topic. Okay, so there's basically two ways to adapt to anything, right? Behavioral changes and physiological changes. So first, let's talk about the behavioral adaptations because frankly, they're less interesting. More or less what you would do if you were lost in the desert. Desert birds tend to spend more time in the shade and also tend to be more nomadic, able to move around and to take advantage of temporally sporadic resources. More interesting to me are the physiological adaptations, what's going on inside the bird. And a major physiological adaptation that aids in a bird's water economy is the reduction of evaporative water loss. Evaporative water loss is all water lost through respiration or through the skin. And one way non-drinking birds can reduce this is with hyperthermia, the opposite of hypothermia. It might seem counterintuitive, but the bird can actually slightly raise its internal temperature to reduce the difference in heat between itself and the environment.
Holy shit! What's wrong with you?
And because the difference is lessened, water doesn't want as badly to get from the inside of the bird to the outside of the bird. Another adaptation reducing evaporative water loss in desert birds is the actual alteration of chemicals in the skin. The outermost layer of a bird's skin is composed of many different kinds of lipids, and desert birds tend to have a higher concentration of a particular kind of lipid called a ceramide, and those aid in the formation of a matrix that prevents water from escaping. Essentially, the skin of desert birds is tighter and less readily allows water to pass through it. And lastly, metabolism was the whole reason I thought canyon wrens were particularly cool to discuss free water abstention in the context of in the first place. So, spoiler alert, even though you would predict their metabolism to be high given their small size, it's not. They metabolically don't require as much water as another bird their size might. So why is that? Or How is that? Well, there's contention as far as I can tell. One idea is that desert birds will have smaller organs that have greater metabolic intensity. For example, the kidneys require a ton of energy to maintain, so desert birds just have them smaller. Less mass requires a lower energy input. Oh, and speaking of kidneys, there's a structure called the loop of Henle in the kidney. Humans have them too. Its whole purpose is the recovery of water from the urine, and desert birds have like crazy amounts of them. More loops of Henle mean more water removed from the urine, and desert birds ultimately end up urinating what is essentially sand. And here's another solution to decrease desert birds' metabolism. Similar to evolution's solution of just throwing loops of Henle at this poor bird, it also just stuffs it to the brim with mitochondria. You know the mitochondria. Higher concentrations of mitochondria means you get more energy output per unit tissue. And because you have more energy being produced by less tissue, you ultimately need less to sustain it, hence lower metabolism. So these are some pretty simple but I think elegant solutions that evolution has come up with to get around a need for lower metabolism. And if there's anything we should take away from today, it's that evolution always knows what's best.
Oh, that's not so much. So?
Okay, I hope you had fun today with me birding, looking for canyon wrens. Let's take a minute and talk about what we learned. First, we learned that Timothée Chalamet is just... We also learned that elephants would eat more bananas if they were a mouse. We also learned some stuff about a bird, and we also learned that I just really can't wait to see Dune in IMAX, so can we please just all get vaccinated so I can just go to a freaking movie theater? Okay, so that's the video for today. I hope you had fun. I know I did, on the cusp of the Angeles National Forest. Drive safe and remember to tip your waitress.
We got some bees getting some pollen right now.
Big bees.